Dang it, the sports card market is just so confusing. You always hear vintage cards, buy vintage because that's where kind of the safety is. There's an excellent documentary on YouTube called Cardboard Dreams. It's a time capsule. I've talked about it many times on the channel. It's going back to 1990. It's a guy's like high school project, like senior year project. Maybe it was senior year of college. I'm not exactly sure, but it basically gives the viewpoints of everybody back then. And you have the young people then talking about Don Mattingly coming up and how all the dealers are like, man, the young people, they just want to buy Don Mattingly, etc. And they're not getting into, the Willie Mays and the Mickey Mantles and paying a little bit extra for those cards. And what do we see today? It's not that different. But there's a dilemma nowadays. You have the GOATs of certain sports, basketball and football, that are really modern cards. Tom Brady for football.
Seductive. Irresistible.
So he started in 2000s, modern. And then Michael Jordan, 1986. He's not really modern. He's not really vintage. He's just 80s. I love how we just kind of throw it in that bucket. 80s. It's like the middle. It's like purgatory. It's not modern, ultra modern, and it's not vintage. But that causes a dilemma. We got to talk through this. But before I do, History Through Cards, Ryan McClanahan's channel, History Through Cards -shortcut. I don't want to mess this up. He's got 159 subscribers right now, and he knows more about the history of baseball cards than maybe anybody else on the internet. So definitely check out Ryan McClanahan's History Through Cards -shortcut. I'll throw up a screenshot. I'll throw a link in the video description. If you are serious about learning just kind of the history of cards, how the history of card collecting came about, this website as well as his YouTube channel is an amazing education. So definitely check out Ryan's channel. Also, thanks to this video sponsor, ComC.com, your home for buying, selling, and flipping all the hottest trading cards. Their consignment marketplace now has 30 million cards. Are you kidding me? From baseball superstars like Aaron Judge to Marvel favorites like Spider-Man. ComC has something for every type of collector. Visit ComC.com today to build your collection with your favorite cards. Definitely check out ComC.com. All right, guys, I was actually thinking about this in the shower, kind of typical. I'm always just kind of thinking about random hobby topics, and I wanted to talk through this. I just have a dilemma. It's just like I can't get through it in my head. You have baseball, football, basketball are really the dominant collecting groups of sports cards right now. Those three. And you've got hockey as a four, soccer's kind of up and coming. But here's kind of the main thing that's really interesting in our hobby is that when you look at kind of the narratives around certain things, vintage has always kind of been the safest play. Now, some are arguing that, is there a bubble for vintage right now? Low grade vintage, because high grade vintage is very, very expensive. But I think the other thing we need to think about is when we think about vintage baseball cards, there's a certain type of collector. Baseball collectors care a lot about stats of baseball. They care a lot about Hall of Famers. And they actually collect a variety of Hall of Famers a lot of times. You'll find vintage baseball collectors that zero in on one guy, Roberto Clemente, for example, or Babe Ruth, or whatever it is. But a lot of times you'll just have guys that are out there looking for great Hall of Famers, and maybe they're looking for low grade vintage rookie cards or second year, third year. With Mantles, it could be a 10th year. But if it's in a nice grade, it's like, it's a cool Mickey Mantle card. It's vintage. I don't really see that the same way on the football or the basketball side. And so when we're looking 20, 25, 30 years from now, is that stuff going to be as important? Will there have built out a vintage, more of a collector base for vintage football and vintage basketball? Because it's not the same as baseball. It just isn't. Now, can it evolve into that? Sure, it can. And I know Fanatics, they've come out, and I know that they still have their Topps NFTs, or they're cutting back on candy, but they still have their Topps NFTs. But they've made clear, Michael Rubin quoted just a few days ago, that they are a big believer in physical collectibles, physical trading cards. So that's out there. But that's moving forward into the future. That's more of kind of like, can they keep it relevant? Can they keep it cool, for the next generation? So question number one, will there be those collectors for basketball and football the same way that there are for baseball down the line? As you have more prolific scoring quarterbacks, are people going to care about the Bradshaws?
Hi, I'm Terry Bradshaw for Z-Rex Antifreeze and Coolant, the premium protection that lasts all year.
The Staubachs.
Roger Staubach for Rolaids.
How do you spell relief?
Rolaids. We don't really eat when we should or what we should, so
I usually take a Rolex.
You know, some of the guys that I collect, the Fran Tarkentons, I'm looking for a Bart Starr rookie card. I will have one of those one day. But will these guys kind of be forgotten in time and give way to the Patrick Mahomes and then Patrick Mahomes III when his kids are playing and the fourth when their kids are playing? You know, and the same on the basketball side. Are people going to care about Bob Cousy and Oscar Robertson? And
Gentlemen, to the future. The NBA proudly inducts the Big O.
They say the car you drive says a lot about you. But we think the kind of people who drive our cars says a lot about Audi. When you're ready to follow your own road, you're ready for an Audi.
some of these guys, these legends, because now scoring in the NBA is just like, it's like you're almost a bum if you're not averaging 20 points a game in the NBA. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, it was a big deal to average 20 points a game in the NBA. And now it's just, it's a scoring machine. Each game is like 150 to 145. It's very, very different. There's not as much defense or an emphasis on defense in the NBA, which I guess is a more exciting NBA, but it kind of reminds me of like the old All-Star games where nobody played any defense and it was just like, it was like 150 to 140, the East versus West All-Star game when it was like Magic Johnson versus Michael Jordan. Now that's like today's NBA where there's just no defense and every night that's pretty much how it goes, which some people really like that product on the court. I know there's others that are kind of turned off by it. I'm one of those. I mean, it's not that I hate it. I think it's awesome. I think these guys scoring 70 points is incredible, but it's just so common now. We're starting to get desensitized to it. And so anyway, for vintage, it's always kind of buy vintage, move into vintage. That's the safety type stuff. But will it evolve? Vintage baseball, I believe will always be, there's always those baseball collectors. And I think too, the next generation will also be into vintage baseball. Really, the card collecting started with baseball. So vintage baseball, I believe, is always going to be a thing. But football, basketball cards, does that carry on the vintage stuff? And which Tom Brady for football, he is the clear-cut GOAT and he is still playing much in the same way that Michael Jordan, ending his career in the late 90s with 6 titles, all the GOAT talk. And you've got kind of Michael Jordan in the 80s, and then you've got LeBron James, which some say that he's the GOAT, based on various factors. There's arguments. He's probably going to be the scoring leader here soon. He's got 4 rings. Steph Curry's got 4 rings too as a modern player, which kind of, I feel like, complicates matters for LeBron. And I don't know how he's going to win another one unless he just kind of like is in a wheelchair on a championship team at 50 or something. And some would say, well, you know what? Buying the GOATs, though, it's very expensive. If you're buying Tom Brady cards, if you're buying Michael Jordan cards. But here's the other thing is they have so many cards, whether we're talking about rookie cards or second year, third year. For Michael Jordan, he's got cards that go all the way out, probably not as many as Tom Brady, but Tom Brady and Michael Jordan are some of the most transacted cards in the hobby. And I don't think that really changes. And even though Tom Brady's still young, he's still playing. I mean, I guess he could do something really stupid to tarnish his legacy. Michael Jordan's kind of done a nice job of that to where he's really just been out of sight, out of mind, outside of charitable things that he does. He makes appearances here and there, but he's not on social media. He's not lighting up social media. You don't really hear from him that much. He just comes out to remind you how badass he was on occasion. And that's pretty much it. Tom Brady, I think, is going to be more in the mainstream. He's probably going to be on social media. So that'll be very interesting because if you're someone that's kind of going all in on Tom, what if there is some sort of a character thing, something crazy that happens that messes with him the same way that, Brett Favre has kind of run into a buzzsaw here lately. I don't study the Brett Favre card market to know if that's drastically affected his prices or not. But Tom Brady is one of these kind of like hobby, Mount Rushmore characters. There's Michael Jordan, there's LeBron James, there's Tom Brady is added onto this list. And, that's going to be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. Is Tom Brady more safe than vintage football or some of the vintage options that are out there just because he is the GOAT? Do you buy the GOAT over maybe the less supply, maybe over the Roger Staubach rookie card? Because a lot of these vintage guys, they only have one rookie card and they've got a limited supply of graded, copies of it. So even though they're not the GOAT, they might have 2 or 3 rings themselves, have passing records and, accolades that they have. But they just don't have near as much supply. And so that is such a tremendous conundrum, I think. What do you guys think about this? Vintage kind of Hall of Famers, but I'm not talking about Bill Russell rookies or Lou Alcindor. I'm talking about more of like, just the Bob Cousy's, guys that are Hall of Famers. But what makes the most sense if you're looking to buy and hold? As it sits now, I have a mix of this stuff. I've got Bradshaw rookies and Staubach rookies, and I've got Tom Brady cards, and I've got some of the basketball stuff too. And I'm just kind of trying to figure out, it's like where to put capital. And this is always kind of a fun debate. So I come to you all to talk me through. Is it, buy GOATs like a Tom Brady or a Michael Jordan, more modern day GOATs, or stick with vintage stuff, or a mix of the bunch? Thanks for humoring me on this rant, guys. Stay healthy, stay awesome. I will talk to you again later.